Shout out Sean, man.
Changing the game through real estate. Yeah, changing the game through real estate. I can never wait.
Tell us, Robert, kind of how you kind of got started in business and marketing and more or less your whole story.
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. I don't know really where to begin with you on that, but I'll just tell you that I've been doing advertising and video production and marketing for about 19 years. And I've worked mostly for other people, like as an employee, but then I went out on my own about 3 years ago and launched my own business right now, which is Syslo Ventures. And we have a second wing of that, which is Syslo Spice. That's our corporate division. But yeah, so we run a 7-figure creative agency right now, and we do everything from web design to social media advertising, video production. Like I was just in Nashville, doing a reality show documentary series that we shot. So that was 5,000 miles traveled in 72 hours. So that was pretty wild. But yeah, we have a lot of different avenues that we work with as far as helping businesses, individuals, influencers with their marketing. But I really got started, I would say, man, it really started in high school for me. I was a part of the media team. We had a project we had to do, and I saw these guys produce a video, and I was like, oh my God, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And that really got me hooked on that. And right out of high school, I actually got an internship for a pretty large film company in Manhattan. So I'm from New Jersey originally. And I didn't have any money. I was, how old was I? 17, 18 years old, traveling from South Jersey to New York City, basically not getting paid at all. I was doing that just for experience. But, I learned the industry a little bit and traveled around Manhattan, went to all these different production houses. And I really wanted to do film. Like that was the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do, filmmaking and making films and all that stuff. But the industry was just very competitive. So around 2008, I went through, my parents, my family, they kind of like dissolved. It was a really big mess that caused a lot of strife for me, but I ended up moving across the country to New Mexico. This was in 2008. So I don't know if you've ever been to New Mexico, but that's
I used to live in Farmington.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I lived in Albuquerque. And I went from New York City to New Mexico, and it was a huge culture shock. And, yeah, but what was interesting at the time was that it was around 2008, 2009, and the state had huge tax incentives for films. And they were building all this, like all of the film industry was going to New Mexico. So they were shooting like Thor was being shot there, No Country for Old Men was being shot there, There Would Be Blood, like all these really big movies were being shot. Breaking Bad actually is shot there. And that was shot in the neighborhood that I lived in most of the time. So I spent the next couple of years like really going through the motions of not having money, really trying to understand my place in the world, but always skirting the edge of film. And what ended up happening was I found a company that would hire local filmmakers to go out and create video advertisements for restaurants and things. And I was the only guy in Albuquerque that applied. And so they were like, good, we're going to give you all the New Mexico stuff. I'm like, okay, great. So for me, I went from this guy who wanted to do film to creating mini films for restaurants, hotels, businesses, the resorts and stuff that were out there. And I went from having zero experience in advertising to producing about 150 video ads in like 90 days. So they would say, hey, you need to go here, you need to shoot it, you need to put it together and get it to us in 24 hours. And so I was just like, hey, give me more of that. They weren't paying very well, but I charge a lot more for what I do now. But it gave me the experience that I was looking for. And so around 2010-ish, like I was doing that for a little while. During this time, I had dropped out of college like 3 times. Like I went back to try to do it, and I was taking film theory courses, and I was just like, can we go get a camera? Like, what does German cinematography have to do with making ads and films today? So, so I ended up dropping out. I was majoring in English and astrophysics. Go figure on that.
What a combo.
Yeah, it was very odd. Like, it was like, why? But anyway, so I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and I worked on a documentary film out there, but that was really tough. So my life took a really big nosedive around that point. I wound up homeless in LA. I was in this relationship with this girl. It was really bad, like just a lot of emotional stress all over the place, and it really broke me down. So I had no real family that I could talk to. I was going through what I would call post-traumatic stress, and I was reaching out to people for domestic violence because I was like, this chick was crazy and she was like doing things all the time, and it was stressing me out. So I remember I would call these shelters and I'd call all these places and I'd say, hey man, like I need some help. Like, can somebody help me out? I'm like going nuts. And they would laugh at me and hang up the phone. So there was like no resources for me. I'm like okay on it now, but at the time it was super traumatic. So
Was
I
that
ended
because
up
you were male?
it's because I was male. It's because I was male. When I said this woman like would chase me down and like do all this insane, they would be like, yeah, right. There's no way that happens.
Jeez.
And I'm like, okay, great. So I ended up linking up with this woman who ran, I didn't know where she was, but she did respond. I was just reaching out to people on social media. I later found out that she was in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's the last island in the Caribbean chain, 7 miles off of Venezuela. And so I'm basically sleeping in my car in LA, and she says, well, why don't you just buy a one-way ticket? We'll get you some work down here. We'll help you out, do some work. And I'm like Mr. Traveler, right? I have no problem doing this. So I sell everything and I buy a one-way ticket down there. Probably wasn't the best idea in hindsight, but what do I know? I was 22, 23. And so I linked up with these guys and I was doing film. Like we were doing documentary stuff. We were doing some ads. And then I started to not get paid. And then I started island hopping and wound up homeless again in another country. So go figure on that. They actually fired me because I was like, I need to eat and I need new clothes and I would like to get paid something. And so I started looking for other jobs while I was down there, which, by the way, is very funny when you're an American in a third world country looking for work, trying to get a job. And they're like, what are you doing here? Go back to the United States. I'm like, I don't have any money to get home. So I wound up linking up with a guy who owned like a Radio Shack thing down there. And I said, look, pay me whatever you want. I'll do your marketing for you. I'll make graphics. We'll figure it out. And so that's when I really started to kind of turn the corner. And my visa ran out and he got me back to Miami, maybe like 7 or 8 months later. So I was doing work for him. Things were starting to get a little bit better, but I was always like, how do I do more production? How do I do more advertising? So here I am in Miami living in a hostel on $100 a week, which is very hard to do. And I ended up taking a job at Banana Republic just to get some money. And I'm like, dude, like this is so embarrassing. I can't believe I have to do this. Like, well, I'm so much more than this. And about 2 months later, I landed a gig with Grant Cardone. I don't know if you know who that is or not.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So
big fan.
Yeah. So I started working with him. That was how long was that? About 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. And I just did all production for him. I didn't know who he was. I just said, hey, look, I'm ready to work. Just give me a job. I'll do it. And I would stay late and I started doing all of his marketing, like creating content for him and really elevating his brand. And that's where I started to really make a name for myself, was helping him on as many levels as I could from a video standpoint, marketing standpoint. And then it eventually grew to this thing where I was asking for more money and they're like, no, go sell things. So I started to sell the video ad service to all of his clients. And that is where I learned the game of sales. And I made my monthly paycheck in one deal. And I was like, wow, this is great.
Mind blowing.
So one deal. And I said, I'm hooked. And so for the next 5.5 years, I spent all my time, working for him. But then I started to segment my day to sell this and increase my income. So when I started, I was making like 36 grand a year. When I left, I think I was doing about 400 grand. And I had scaled a ad agency to $12 million in contract value my last year. And then the entrepreneurial bug bit me. And I was like, hey, I think it's time for me to go on my own and fast track through all of that. And first year in business, pandemic hit and had to experience that. But we were doing amazing. We delivered great products. And here we are today on a podcast interview, more or less. That's like the last 10 years of my life, 10,000 foot overview of it.
Wow. I appreciate you telling us that story. That story is amazing. And definitely coming from like getting beat down, like sounding like consistently, but finding your way to make it through. That's really
Every
impressive.
time I turned around, it was like getting socked in the face by something. And I was like, I can't be crazy. Like, what is going on? And I realized that it had to do more with just not having the knowledge of how to navigate people. Like I was trying therapy. I went to all these different churches and I was like, nobody's giving me like what I'm looking for. I want like stability and I couldn't find it. I found it eventually, but yeah.
So
So
what really helped motivate you through that? Because it sounded like life kept like kicking you in the face, and you just kept battling and battling.
yeah, I mean, it was this. I had this really strong intention that I would get to do what I wanted to do, which was film and advertising and really creating brands. So I just looked at everything I did as like one step closer to where I wanted to go. Look, when you're homeless and you've got nothing, you're like, okay, what do I have to lose if this doesn't work? I'll just be right back where I am. So I kept kind of having that jump off the cliff, don't care attitude, and developed a lot of training and skills along the way, but really just motivating on the purpose of what I wanted to do in my life is the only thing that kept me going. I just believed that I would succeed at one point. I didn't know when that point was, but I knew that it would happen, and it did happen on a big level. But that's really the only thing that kept me going.
From talking to a lot of people, I hear some people are like afraid of being homeless and everything. Did you feel like that almost gave you an advantage? Because like, oh, I've been here. This is rock bottom, and I know what that's like, and everything else is up from here.
Well, I mean, I could tell you I don't want to ever do it again, and I will never do it again. But it does give you a sense of like, it's weird. I mean, I remember being like, how did I came up in a, upper middle class home. We had a huge pool. We had like 3 cars. We went on vacations. We had money. How am I here? And so it really kind of pissed me off that I was there. I was just like, I can't even believe this. So it gives you an advantage in the sense that you either got 2 choices there. You either succumb to it and you just say, this is it, and that's all I'm going to do, or you just get really pissed, which is what I did, and change the whole outcome. Like I just was like, I'm a smart guy. I know how to communicate, very talented. I work hard. There's no reason why I should be at this position. So I just channeled all that attention in the correct direction, which nobody gave me any guidance on. Where it turned, my friend in Trinidad, she owned a bookstore. And it's a really funny, really interesting story, but they were moving all the books out of her store, whatever. They were moving all the books out of her store, and they were sitting in her like veranda type of a thing. And on the floor was the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Just
I read that
the
book.
only book
Amazing book
in the middle of the room. And I just looked at it and I said, sounds like I could use that because I obviously don't know how to make friends and I would love to be able to influence people a little better. And so that really started my personal development journey. And once I started to see that there was actually some knowledge out there that could guide me in the direction of where I wanted to go, that kind of propelled me forward. But yeah, it does give you an advantage because you become really hungry and then you never want to go back there again. So you do everything you can to maintain and excel what you have.
So what would be your best piece of advice for like your older self to kind of like help you avoid all the obstacles that you face? What would be your best piece of advice to your older self if you're just starting out?
My older self? You mean to my younger self?
My bad. Younger self.
Yeah.
Like,
I would say if you see somebody acting a certain way and you think it's crazy and leave it alone. And don't try to fix it. Don't try to get involved with it. Just literally say to yourself, that's crazy and I'm going to go this way.
Yeah, that's right. Or the
I mean,
3
that's
C's,
honest.
you can't control it, you didn't cause it, and you can't cure it. Leave it alone.
Yeah, and look, I had responsibility in there. Like I was not a perfect angel, but I mean, at the same time, I didn't have that ability to really trust my own perception of what I saw and trust where I thought I needed to go. Like I thought I needed validation for that. And so my younger self would really just be a moment of like, you already know what you have to do. Just go do it. You know that that's not good for you. Don't do it. You know that person's not good for you or those people or that job's not good for you. Just leave it. Like it's not worth it. And that's really how I live today is just, with clients, with people, like if people start acting crazy, I just goodbye. Like I don't even waste time. Same thing with clients. Like I fire clients. I'm like, look, I've tried to handle you for 3 months. We're done. Adios. You want a refund?
Yeah.
No problem. Get off. Get like we're done. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
like
a
I'm
hard thing to
willing
do.
to lose it because it just causes too much damage, and nobody teaches anybody that.
Well, how did you keep your mindset going when you were homeless in those places like that? I know a lot of people get in the pity pot or get on that, oh, poor me thing. It sounds like you pretty strong willed.
Yeah, I just tried to channel that into creative things. Like I would do a lot of photography. I would practice my skill. Like I still had a computer, I still had a camera, but I was like trying to make it all work. So I took all that and tried to put it into other things that would get my attention off of the craziness. I also had a really good friend that, helped me through it. She really was, she would take my calls, she would listen to me, she would talk to me, just kind of give me some support when I needed it. So I had one person who was like really good at just like being there, which I was very thankful for. But a lot of it, even when that phone call was done, like all that anxiety would come back. And so I would have to find ways to channel that direction. And then I think one day I just got sick of it and just said, I mean, we got to do something about this. Like, it's not going to get
Yeah.
any better if we don't do anything. So I think you have to have a really strong mentality to be able to overcome that and drive forward.
So when you, I guess to fast track forward to your second stage when you started working for Grant Cardone, so how did sales kind of really help you toward marketing? Because you were all film and media, and then when you learned sales, that kind of like it was like almost like an aha moment, and everything kind of changed for you. Like, how did that kind of what kind of changed in your filmmaking to once you learned the mindset of a person, a consumer?
Well, I mean, I didn't even realize that what I was doing was technically advertising, branding, and sales. Like I
Yeah.
was doing it already. So when I had somebody actually start to say this, I realized that's what I have been doing for the last 7 or 8 years. And I just didn't know it. Like I didn't really hear the term entrepreneur until I started working with him, which you got
Yeah.
to think about that. I was 25, 26 when I started working with him. So when I saw, and I didn't really understand it, like people were talking, oh, he's going to do the close now. I'm like, what do you mean the close? Oh, he's pitching. I'm like, what do you mean by pitching? He's objection handling. What's that mean? Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? And so, I mean, we recorded thousands of hours of content together. And I never asked him questions. I just did what I did and helped him, get it out there. But by listening to it and being in that room for so much, one day I just said, I'm learning this. I'm learning this. I got this. And so I started to experiment and see what I could do as a salesperson. And when I closed my first deal, I mean, it was a $15,000 deal. I got paid, what is it, 1,500. So I got paid 10% of that. And I was like, wow, okay, so this is how you make more money. And then I realized, oh, just ask people for more money and you'll make more of a commission. And
Yeah.
so I became like the top, like that company, God bless them, because I think at one point they didn't expect what was going to happen, because when I see that something works and I see that I get results with it, I go hammer time on it. Like I just don't, I'm like, oh, it works. So why not just do it to the max? And so what ended up happening is I just became one of the top the top income producer for the company, month over month, because I was just getting so much money for what we were doing, ethically, of course. But when I understood it, it changed my viewpoint on how I market, how we do promotion, how I do my video stuff. I thought learning sales and that business and advertising angle was going to ruin my creative side. It actually made it better because I could really communicate both worlds. I could talk to the corporates and the enterprises and other salespeople, but still inject this really high energy creative thing, which is like, what do you do with that? So it made it better. It actually made it really what it is today, and I just keep building on it all the time.
So what's the key when you're working with your clients? I mean, what's the key to know what they want?
Well, I mean, there's a few things with that, but realistically, I mean, I basically know in 30 seconds where we need to go and what that brand is going to be. And there's a lot of variables to that. So there's how that person communicates, how that person presents themselves, what industry they're in, what products they have, how they view their products against competitors, what their competitors are doing and where they position themselves, how often they promote, have they promoted before, just what's the overall energy vibe? What are they going for? Do they donate to charities, that kind of thing. So I take all that information in very quickly and then start to assimilate where it's going to go. So for each client, it's different. The mechanics of it, of how I do it, is the same. It's just who we're dealing with in front of me at that moment is what I'm interested in. And that's why we could take, 7 or 8 wholesalers from across the country and say, cool, well, every single one of these person is selling the same thing in different locations, but they all have different viewpoints and approaches. And my job is to extract what that is so that they can continue to grow in their business. And we do that across multiple industries. But that's how I really discover it. Like, every person goes through this kind of onboarding deep dive with me where I assimilate all this information from them and then I create from that point.
So do you have like a best piece of advice for someone who's just kind of starting out? Let's say they just started their real estate company or something like that. They're just trying to find the best way to market themselves and their company just starting out. Do you have any piece of advice that would be very crucial for them, just at least just starting off?
Yeah, I mean, really, the first thing is, look at everything you have, take inventory that's right in front of you, and start looking at how many different ways you can start to talk about that, from a graphical standpoint, from a video standpoint, from a promotion standpoint. I don't care if you don't have thousands of dollars to run ads or you don't have all the fancy equipment out there. It's just a matter of, are you showing up and are you willing to communicate? The guys that do that, regardless of what they have, they always get leads. Like my business, not like took no loan for this company. It was 94% organic lead traffic off of every social platform. We spend a lot on ads nowadays, but again, like when I left Grant, I started at zero. I had a year non-compete. I couldn't even talk about the thing that made me money. So what was I going to do? People are more interested in your journey and you and your viewpoint and how you do things than they are more about the product. I mean, I've had people just randomly, I've gotten 40, 60, $100,000 deals because I posted a video of me surfing. It's like, you would never think that, but that's what happens. I used to joke around, like we staticize everything we do, like every post that I put out. And I tell my team, I'm like, I need to go out paddleboarding in the morning some more because we haven't gotten so many deals from that, because we used to get a lot of deals from it, right?
Yeah.
So you'd be surprised what things people find interesting and want to talk to you about, and where that could lead from a sales perspective, especially in real estate.
Yeah, and I guess they're just more or less trying to find a way to relate to you. Like, oh, he does wakeboarding, I do wakeboarding, and they find like a common path to kind of relate to.
Could be whatever. Yeah, it could be wakeboarding, whatever it is. I mean, I would say out of the politics stuff, for sure, but everything else is pretty much fair game,
See, like I guess for me, like me personally, like I've never ran ads like ever for anything. And what kind of value do you feel like does like paying for ads and everything like that like do for a business? I've never even looked at it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's a few different avenues that you can run ads for, right? So there's just the awareness play, which is, I'm here, take a look at me, here's what we have. There's the lead generation play where you're just generating leads for you to call, for your team to call. And then there's like the newsletter play where you're just trying to get people into a database or like an Infusionsoft system or something like that you want to grow a list with. And then you have your like your e-commerce stuff that you want to sell, like courses and products. Now, what's the advantage to doing paid ads? Well, if you don't have a huge following, it's a good way to jumpstart it. If you want to increase a reach of your company, it's a great way to do it. Like, you don't have to spend a lot to reach 100,000 people right now with all these platforms. And what's cool is that when whatever ad you decide to run, let's say you reach 100,000 people over 30 days and you spent $600-$700 on awareness. Well, now those 100,000 people are now a part of your audience. So you can go back and you can retarget them, meaning you can run more ads to them or deeper level ads or educational information. So you're cultivating and nurturing your position in the marketplace so that when you're ready to ask for leads or you're ready to ask for specific product sales or something like that, you've got this trust that's really built up because they keep seeing you over and over again.
What about there being so many different platforms? Do you kind of like just really focus on one, or there's so many like LinkedIn,
There are a
TikTok,
lot. Like the recent one that everybody was on was, what was that one? It was the chat one where everybody just talks. I forget the name.
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. Yeah. Look, I think it's great. I mean, if you have time to spend 4 hours on Clubhouse, I mean, you should be I could
That's what I
go
was
make
saying.
sales calls for 4 hours and go make $5,000 or $10,000 or 34, whatever. Right. And I was on there. I thought it was great. My only concern was just like, what are you doing with all this time? Like, so I'm very active. Like today I've produced, I don't know, I think we've done somewhere in the vicinity of 125 social media posts on my business right now. I'm setting up for my live stream. I've recorded content. I built out an editing course, or I could have sat in Clubhouse all day. I'm like, well, all these things I'm doing are going to make me money. I don't want to talking about making money. I'm going to do something that I can make money. So I'm not hating on Clubhouse. That's just my viewpoint on it. I still think it's great, but I usually focus on the big five. So that's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. I did just get a TikTok last week, which I'm experimenting with. I don't know how viable it is. I'm just curious about it. I mean, some of my content did pretty well, but I mean, I still get all my stuff from my other platforms that I go with. So there's so many, and people try to get on them, and they're like jack of all trades, master of none. It's like,
Yeah.
pick 2 or 3, get really good at it, and then start to branch out. The reason why I did TikTok is because I feel like my other platforms are mastered and we've got a system. Now I'm experimenting to see, is this a viable platform? Our clients all run on, Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube and Google ads and all those things. But I don't try to overextend. I try to narrow down and get really focused on it and just blast on those, because that's what works.
So do you feel like paying for ads on one service, like, is there any ones better than the other? It's just
Totally depends on what you're trying to go after, right?
like your
So if we're
target
going
audience?
more niche enterprise, Google is going to be your better place to go. If you're trying
Yeah.
to reach the general public, Facebook, Instagram, even YouTube's good for that. Recruitment, LinkedIn is going to be a really good platform for recruitment.
Yeah.
Even some marketing that you're trying to get leads for a business, although it's very expensive. It's a lot more expensive than these other guys. But yeah, there are platforms that perform better depending on what your main goal is. It just depends on where you're trying to go with it.
So if you starting out your company for the last 3 years, what do y'all kind of provide for businesses? Are you just like big corporate businesses, or do you work with small
No,
entrepreneurs also?
I mean, it's amazingly, we work with everyone. I mean, we've got one of the second largest health insurance companies in the United States as a client. And then we have, a small automotive shop that's out in the Midwest that we market for. They're doing really well. We have single entrepreneurs. We have solo entrepreneurs. We've got mid-level businesses, enterprise level businesses, Fortune 5,000. So we have something for everyone, which is great. I try not to let pricing get in the way. I mean, some people say, well, we want this, and this, but our budget's this. And I'm like, it's not going to happen. I mean, you can't go buy a Ferrari for 20 grand. It's not going to happen. So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, we're strict. We are a little bit picky on who we work with, but we also don't refuse business in that sense.
I understand.
We'll have a conversation. We'll see what we can do. We've been able to help people as low as $1,000 a month, and we have people that we help for $15,000, $20,000 a month. So it really depends on what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
I think you have probably like the coolest business job, because I love marketing, but the main point of it is more or less storytelling, because you can like almost tell a story. I feel like that's the most powerful form of, in my opinion, of marketing, because you can kind of, I don't know, just tell a story and bring passion to something out of nothing. That's how you inspire people, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because a lot of people, they're like afraid to communicate. Like they're afraid to go on social media. Even business owners that are doing really well, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. And so what we do is we're able to extract and handle that kind of fear for them and really put them out in the marketplace. And then like we had a client, a very, very cool guy, very conservative guy, awesome dude, very much building a large company. And we started marketing him. He's like, I've never done this before. I said, all right, just trust me. Just get me some photos of yourself. We'll put it on LinkedIn. and these other platforms will get it going. He's in the construction business, and like within the first 2 weeks, we put a post out. We didn't even spend money on ads yet, and he goes, "There's a guy that owns $1 billion construction company that every other construction company on planet Earth tries to get appointments with. And you put this post out on LinkedIn for me that's just talking about making phone calls to get the job done. He saw that post, called me, and we have a meeting next week for a $150 million construction deal." And I'm like,
Jeez. That's awesome.
I'm like, can you give me 10% on
Yeah.
that?
I didn't tell you that part.
I did not charge you enough. But anyway,
he's like, well, hey, just so you know, like our fees have gone up a little bit.
yeah, right. But that's taking somebody who never did it before, doesn't know what to expect, and we get to tell that story, and that's what happens. You know, the guys that rely on advertising and marketing as as like a lifesaver, or my business is about to go, like, we don't take those clients. You know, I'll be like, "Is this your last?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No, we're not going to take your business," because that's not really how the game works. Like, you need to sustain it over time and really put a lot of energy into it. So, yeah, but we really do a lot to tell different stories, which we've touched so many different industries, and I know so much about so many different industries. It's a lot of fun.
So to like tell a story about a business, what are the main points that you try to try to hit in your like marketing presentation to like truly market a person or a company?
Yeah. So really what we try to do is we get to the individual level of like the owner or the people that are around the owner, and we start telling all those stories, and then we start to market that content across. You'll never run out of content on that level. Second thing we do is we listen to a few different avenues. So the first avenue would be, what were all the reasons why people did buy? What were all the reasons why they didn't buy? And then what were all the reasons why they haven't bought yet? And we list all that out, and we start making advertisements based around each one of those things. So you start to see how much work is really happening on that level. Like, if you just think about what are like 15 reasons why somebody didn't buy in an industry, you start to see that the pattern is the same. So you can kind of play with that. But where the twist happens is when you're dealing with the person that's actually going to solve those problems. So we break all that out. And then we move into heavy content creation that becomes really the basis for the brand, you know. And branding is not just, oh, let's get the colors, let's get this, get the website. Like, the brand is that consistent and persistent message that can continue to go no matter what and solve all those problems that people have or considerations. The other area we go into, which is a lot more aggressive, is we look at the competition. Now, there's a caveat with this. I tell people not to look at the competition in the sense of like, don't compare yourself to them. Don't like try to say, oh, they're so much better. No, like, because you don't know what's going on there. I asked them to compare the competition from the sense of, where's your position in relation to them, and what parts of the market are they not touching or failing to touch or failing to do a good job on. And then you start to strategize how you can take that away from them. And that's really that kind of fourth level aggression, where we analyze what people are doing. We look at reviews, we look at Google reviews, and we say, oh, well, okay, they're not, all right, good. Let's make some ads on that. And we start to attack on that kind of aggressive front.
When you talk about, when you said at first you take the owner and then you start advertising the people that are around them. So do you get kind of personal with that, or is that just, do you always, how much personal to business content do you keep out there?
The rule was always like 90-10, 90% personal, 10% business. That's what we see works really well. Like, we really want to show the person to pull attention, and then we shift over and drop in like a real hard hitting ad or some sort of sign up thing that we can utilize. So I would say it's about 90-10 on that front.
And what you said a couple minutes ago, you said when people like don't buy and everything, it's like a common thing, that reason people don't buy or commit to brands. What is that? What is that thing that you've seen?
The common reason?
Yeah, you said there was like most of the times there's like a reason why someone doesn't commit. Like, you know how like when like, I don't know if you were getting into.
Yeah, I was saying that in relation to the industry, but I mean, if there's an overall common reason, it's just that, you know, there's so many people trying to appear as like the guys, trying to appear as, you know, bigger than what they really are. And we help kind of outmaneuver those guys just by pure content alone. So if you look at somebody that's always consistently communicating, you're going to be probably more prone to want. They may not have to have thousands of views on it, but you'll be more prone to listen to what that person has to say because they are showing up that frequently. And if they're showing up that committed, it's like, what are they going to do for me? So the common thing is just that there's a lot of deception in marketing, and it's our job to really get rid of that deception and position people in the correct light, no matter the industry, so that people will want to talk to them and do business with them.
So what are some of the misconceptions with marketing?
Misconceptions. That you can build a brand in 30 days and have it ROI $1 million. That it's going to take, that you don't need to be involved in the advertising as an individual. You're going to have to be involved in some point at some level, whether it's your face or somebody's face inside the marketing, and that you're going to have to spend more than you think you realize to really make it work. Advertising is such an inverted world where it will cost you less if you spend more to actually convert sales. I know that sounds really weird, but if by spending less, it's actually more expensive to get somebody to convert. I'll give you an example. Let's say you come out and you're like, okay, I only have $350 to spend on advertising dollars, and you get 2 leads and they cost you $150 a piece. It's pretty expensive. Now, let's take that same person or somebody else in the same industry, and they're like, I've got $5,000 to spend a month in advertising. That's about $600 a day, maybe a little bit less. My math could be really off on that. Maybe it's $60 a day. I got to look at it. But let's say now, you can spend that money. You've got more money to play with on these platforms, and your lead cost goes from $150 all the way down to $20. So now you look at it and you say, I've got more volume of leads, more opportunities to convert. If my ad spends $5,000 and my product is $10,000, $15,000, I mean, how do you quantify that? So you could go cheap and have it take a year and a half to get the results you're looking for. Or you can set a logical budget, 5, 10, 15 grand, maybe more. I mean, I've worked with guys that are spending, $500,000 a month. But just by comparison, that's really a misconception. It's like spending less is not always a good thing. Spending more is actually better for you.
Right. Well, it's so interesting because listening to your story, obviously seems like whenever you were when one of your breaks came, you always were in front of the right person. It's like, so I guess it was, what do you think you did? Just not afraid to ask the question?
I think it was really just a unrelenting, never-ending reach for something more. Like I was always reaching for more information. And when I felt like I didn't have the right information, I would go talk to somebody else until I would get the right information.
So that you'd always ask the question.
I was always asking questions because when someone's telling you something and you're like, yeah, that's a bunch of BS, dude. Or it's like, that sounds pretty applicable. It's got a different kind of a flow to it. So if I could take advice and apply it immediately, I would be like, well, okay, that makes sense. It works. So it was always a reach for getting the right information, and I wouldn't stop. I wasn't just satisfied with information. It was always like, where's the actual information that I need right now?
Yeah, it sounded like you believed in yourself, no matter if anyone else did or not.
So what was that?
That you believed in yourself, no matter what anyone else thought.
Yeah, I knew I had the capacity. I knew I had the ability. I just needed I had the jet. I built the jet. I just was like, I don't know how to drive it. I don't know how to take off. I need the runway. Where do I get the runway? How do we where's the gas? I was missing a few pieces that I needed. And so it was just a matter of, I believed I could do it. I just needed the pieces that I knew I was missing, which I think is pretty wild. Like most people don't even know that they're missing information,
right? Yeah.
Or that they have wrong information.
Well, how did you meet Grant Cardone? I mean, how did you get to him?
Craigslist.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there was an ad on Craigslist. It said New York Times bestselling author was looking for a video genius to edit videos for him, and I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. Sounded cool. So I didn't know who he was. I applied. They asked for a video, and I had the job within 3 days. I remember I went in and I met the VP, and I saw Grant. I was like, hi. And that was all it was. And no idea about anything. This was back in 2013. So this was like, there were 7 people in the company at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's how I met him. I didn't know. I looked at his website. I was like, yeah, I'll help him. I could help him out. Looks cool. Okay.
So you help him build
right?
like 10X and all that stuff? Because I've read all his books. I think they're really good.
Did what?
Did you help him build like his 10X movement that he's trying to do?
In a way, yeah, I helped on that front for sure. Like we've done so many 10X ads, so many 10X videos, webinars, things like that. Like all those like early like sales, closing webinars and stuff. We did a lot of that. I was up there until I left after 10X Growth Con 2. That was when I left. So that was 2018.
Yeah, because I've read a bunch of his sales books too. I definitely learned a lot from that.
Yeah. I mean, I went through all of the training material a few times, and then there was like 2 webinars where I just was like, "Oh, I get sales. That's it. I needed to know that."
Yeah.
And it had to do with objections and following up. And once I figured those 2 things out, I was just like, "This is game on." But yeah, leaving that was a tough decision. That took me about 7 or 8 months to come to a decision on.
I guess if someone wanted to learn more about like videography and creating videos, how do you suggest they go about doing that to become the best? Like,
well, I'm going to have a course that's going to be available in like 3 weeks. So if you just watch and follow my social media, you can get on there. It's going to be really inexpensive. But really, if you in the meantime, like the way that I did it is I would just cut up movies. I would cut up different videos. I got a camera and I just started playing with it. I watched a lot of film, I watched a lot of ads, and I would just try to figure out how they were doing what they were doing. And that's how I did it. Like I just would practice and experiment. Really, I was never truly formally trained in editing until maybe 5 or 6 years after I've been doing it and had already done jobs. Because I just kept experimenting, and that's how I learned. I just was like, oh, let's try this. Let's try that. Let's try this.
Yeah, it's a lot to learn. I've been learning it slowly but surely, but it's definitely a lot. But
yeah, that course I'm doing is it's like an express, like, here's what you need to know to sit down and start right now and get you going. So it's good.
Yeah, I might have to.
Well, I also think that, like you said, I think that people that are real successful, they're not afraid to try. They just keep trying. And if it doesn't work, they find something else. They don't really need the formal training. They just have that gumption to try it,
Yeah. I mean, when I told everybody I was going to go out on my own and start my own company, they were like, you're crazy. That's insane. Why would you do that? Like, that's stupid. You're dumb. What are you thinking? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I have an Aston Martin now, so I must have worked out pretty well, and I helped and donated 30% of my profits to charity last year. So,
oh, wow.
I mean, it's like, dude, people don't understand when you have drive and when you have this ambition that like you can't suppress. It's actually a disservice to you to do that. So you just have to run with it.
So what's motivating you to grow? Like what's your mission and what you're trying to achieve?
Well, there's a few things. Realistically, I would love to have my company. Right now we're at 7 employees. I would like to get that up to about 100. And then I really would like to do a lot more humanitarian work and really help out like kind of that kind of world a little bit more with income that I could produce. But then also just kind of help people communicate, more effectively on these platforms. Even if these platforms aren't here in like 5 years, what I'm talking about is still, there'll just be something else that you have to apply it to. So it's kind of multifaceted on that front. So we want to grow the business, expand the business, really get some big boy clients, but really also give back in as many ways as we can.
Yeah, I think video is definitely the future. It seems like most people, it's kind of getting away from pictures and more like storytelling and videography and everything like that. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, it's all video now. Yeah.
That's good.
But I guess just to wrap up, where can people find more about you or learn if they're interested in joining or helping out your company or wanting to use your services? How would they go about getting a hold of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, you go to any social media platform, you can do at Robert Syslo Jr. And you'll just see me there and follow me, message me. I'm really known for lightning fast responses, which is what I do. And then you could just go to the website, sysloventures.com, and check out everything we have there.